Welcome to Freelance Talks. Here we discuss the dark side of freelancing about which nobody usually talks out loud. In this show, we speak with experienced freelancers, and I'm sure listening to their stories helps you prepare for freelancers' challenges. My name is Yuri. I'm a community builder at Code Control and 9am.works, and my guest is Ashwin Chacko, an amazing visual storyteller, positively playful connector, motivational speaker, Fruitful Life podcast host, and a freelancer with 15 plus years of experience. So, welcome, Ashwin.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Let's jump right away to the easiest question. What is the most challenging part of being a freelancer?
So easy. I think the most challenging part is getting used to the ebb and flow of work. You have to be willing to flex and plan for the ebb and flow of work, because whether you like it or not, this is the reality. You are going to have some months of nothing and other months of heavy rain. So you just have to learn to relax and not stress in those, those dry seasons, and enjoy it. And then when the fruitful seasons come of loads and loads of stuff, then you go with it.
How do you deal with it? What is your process of dealing with ebbs and flows?
Yeah, so I initially, like most freelancers, I used to panic in the time. I'll never get work again. Like that's
We all
that's
gonna
what's going.
die.
Yeah, that's going in our heads. But over time, I've learned that those are the periods to really pursue those personal projects. So in the quiet months, that's actually how I started the Fruitful Life podcast. There was no work in January, February. So I was like, I always wanted to start a podcast. Why not just give it a shot? And the truth is, these personal projects, your curiosity will often lead to an opportunity, and one that you are excited about. So for me in 2018, again, I was going through these ebbs and flows. I had seen that hand lettering had become a big thing here. A little late in the trend, but like everybody was in it, at least in Ireland. And so I was like, that's really cool. I really like hand lettering, but I have nothing in my portfolio. I have nothing to show. And so I developed a 30-day Instagram project to work on my hand lettering. And the reason why I put it on Instagram, announced it publicly, was for accountability. Because we're often willing to let ourselves down, but we find it harder to do that for other people. It's harder to let other people down. And so having a public sphere as your accountability partner is one way of doing that. So anyway, at the end of the 30 days, I realized there was a theme in the work I had created, these hand-lettered typographical pieces. They were all sort of reflections on the freelance journey. And so I was like, okay, let's just put this together and make it into a book. And then I took the book to different art directors, went into studios, showed them the work, and I was like, oh, and there's a book. And I left them a copy. And then I started getting hired to do hand-lettered typography pieces. So you really use those quiet months to be strategic about where you want to go in your career, and develop those personal projects that often get left to the side when the paid work comes in. So take advantage of that.
Sounds like a curated serendipity. So you kind of had a goal, but you didn't have like a pass, like a strict pass to this goal. Am I hearing it correct?
Yeah, there's like, as creatives, we're passionate about so many different things, and sometimes we don't have the times to pursue them. These quiet moments are spaces to do that. And sometimes they're a part of our larger vision, and sometimes they're just an exploration. So you can use it both ways. Both will help your creative practice. Maybe it's just upskilling you, or other times it can be a lot more strategic in your outlook. So the podcast was strategic for me.
Mm.
Writing books strategic for me, as a part of my larger vision on where I want to be. So it's gonna vary depending on where you are in your career and what you want out of it.
Got it. So, what is the most time consuming thing you must deal with as a freelancer except for work itself?
Taxes. It's such a pain in the butt. Admin, basically. Yeah. Emails, admin, they're the most time consuming thing. Dealing with receipts. This year I had to register for VAT, which was
Mm-hmm.
another pain in the butt because like every 2 months you have to like, yeah, it changes your process. You have to re-evaluate, and then you have to take steps to ensure that you're compliant with government rules and all the
Mm-hmm.
rest of that. So that is the most time-consuming thing
Do you
for
deal
me.
with it yourself?
No, I have an accountant, but I still need to get him all the stuff, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I have to
yeah,
give him the stuff so he can do that, do the rest. But yeah, it's still like annoying. But I've developed a system now. And actually having the VAT thing has made it easier for my yearly tax thing.
yeah,
Um, because every 2 months I'm already assessing and giving all that information to my accountant. So at the end of the year, he already has everything he needs to do my yearly tax assessment. And then the other thing is like figuring out things around money and dealing with that because a lot of times as freelancers, your tax is not getting taken out by an employer,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
your 20%
Yeah,
income. And so now I've developed a system where as soon as the income comes in, I take 20% and I put it in a secondary bank account, and that's my tax payment account
yeah,
because
yeah.
I have been caught out at the end of the year and be like, I have no money to pay the tax man. And then like the next job comes in and you're like, okay, here you go. It's all for the tax.
Yeah, yeah, I totally feel that. And what is your most nerve consuming thing?
Um, I suppose it's waiting for, when a job comes in and you're like, will I get it or not? You're pitched against three or four other creatives, and the waiting is it's so annoying.
Yeah, what do you do while you wait?
I try not to think about it. I was like, pretend like I don't need it.
And when you are competing for a project, is it always with some random people, or sometimes there are some people you know and maybe connect with?
A lot of times you don't know who it is. It might have been people I know, but because it's through an agency, they're not telling you who the other people are, generally speaking.
And have you ever had this moment when you were talking to a friend and like sharing the project and they were like, "Oh, I'm like competing with you for this project."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm a part of a group called Illustrators Ireland. It's like
Hmm.
the professional body of illustrators here. And so a lot of the times the clients think that we don't talk to each other, but when a job comes in and like 10 of us got the same pitch proposal and they're asking us for like budgets and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Like, did you guys get this job? They were asking for so little. Maybe we should, have this conversation.
Negotiate.
That's sort of, yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it sound like a very great setup, when you have like not monopoly, but kind of like you teach the market, not go for what it gives you, but like, hey,
Yeah.
it worth more, so deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, even within that, it's like it's not like every illustrator gives the same price.
Yeah.
It's all value based, right? And where you are in your career. But having a sense that, like €100 is too low,
Yeah,
Everybody should
exactly.
know that, and there is still value to the work, so I think it's really helping both illustrators understand what their value is, because more often than not creatives undervalue themselves, and then businesses know the value you create. That's why they're coming to you. And so if you can speak their language or learn to speak their language of the potential value that the work is going to bring, you're it's going to be easier for you to sell yourself. It's going to easier for you to say this is the sort of impact you're going to have
Yeah.
in the sphere of business.
As a freelancer, do you ever feel professional loneliness?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like we're we work in solitude most of the time, right? And so that's why it's super important to have community around you, why it's super important to take the time to build that, because otherwise you can get lost in that place. It also creatively, it's great to have people you can be like, hey, what do you think of this work? And like, what are your thoughts? And getting outside perspective other than your own thoughts, because again, you can very much loop
Hmm.
and have depending on your personality type, they can be very negative or too positive. And it's finding the balance between the two. Yeah.
Currently, we have a lot of online communities, and like after COVID, we had even more. So, what is your approach to participate in the community? Is it online based? Is it in person? Maybe mixed? How it works for you?
I think it has to be a mix of the two. Sometimes it's online because, people live all over the world now and
Yeah,
we're in touch with them. And, even now we're having conversation across countries.
yeah,
So that's great in that way when you can connect with people outside of your, uh, you won't normally have access to. But at the same time, I think we as human beings need the physical. We need that physical interaction as well. And I think, there is also a bit of like with online, there almost has to be an agenda for things to continue. You can't really have small talk that leads into, secondary conversations or, spontaneity that physical life has. And so finding a balance between the two, accessing the advantage of online, the fact that you can reach across the world, and then tapping into the local physical, it is the best of both worlds.
Currently many people loves remote work because it saves time of commuting to work and back. So also you have 3 kids. So how do you find time to participate in person?
My kids go to bed at 7.
Oh, that's a secret. Okay.
So it's all balance again, give and take. My wife will take day off. I might take a day off. It's finding, it's learning to prioritize things. And then the reality is, as a freelancer, because I get to choose my times,
Mhm.
um, a lot of times when I worked in an office environment, a lot of time was wasted just like waiting for briefs or doing random things that don't actually impact the work.
Yeah.
Whereas uh, as a freelancer, time is my own. I make my time, and as long as I get my work done, and I'm the type of person who's like bang out all the work in like a day or two, and then I'm free the rest of the week, you know? And so as long as I get my stuff done, then I'm free. And
Yeah.
so that's sort of my approach. And a lot of times I don't have such huge influxes of work where I can't manage the time well. So it's again prioritizing, discipline, um, uh, yeah, those would be the two key things.
And a little bit of distraction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, organized distraction.
Organized distraction. So, if your friend wanted to become a freelancer, what are top 3 things you'd advise them to consider before doing it?
So I have a whole book that has advice on it. Keep at it. No, so top three. Number one would be don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's something that we have to unlearn from school because all through school
Yeah.
you're taught, you know, failure is a bad thing. F, you don't get a career, you don't get life. Whereas
Yeah.
with creatives, mistakes are how we learn, mistakes are how our careers grow, mistakes are how we make the best work. And so don't be afraid to make mistakes. Number two, is your value is in who you are, not what you do. This is key. You need to have an identity that is anchored outside of your work. Otherwise, your work is gonna take over you, and it's it's gonna be detrimental to your mental health. Um, and number three is make friends.
Hmm.
Build a community
Yeah.
because um, your friend will sell you better than any meme, GIF, whatever, you know? So those connections are what is going to make the biggest impact in your career, in your life. Um, I think in life in general, we're made to be creatures of connection. And so if you can lean into that, build real friendships,
Yeah.
you're going to make an impact in your career. You know?
To your point about friends, I recently saw it's kind of advertisement on LinkedIn, like a small clip when there is a line of people for an interview and like person is coming and starts doing crazy thing, like starts screaming, like jumping to the walls, going to an aquarium with and like no, no, please don't do that. And people like, sitting there in line here and like starting going away one by one. And then like the final, he's like taking himself like jumping through the door and people like oh crazy they're going away just one person left and then this interviewer like oh okay so please come and then this person coming out there is this person who were doing crazy things like out on the street so did you get this job and he was like yeah and it was about having good friends who are ready to do everything for you to get a job.
Nice, nice.
So yeah it's I can totally relate and Ashwin, I wish to have the sky as the limit, but time is the limit. So, the final question if you were starting freelancing today, what is one thing you would have done differently?
One thing. Um, I think sorting out my taxes at the start, figuring out the legal tax system is is one thing I would start with so that I know to take out 20% because like I said, I got caught out one year and I had like a huge bill that I had to pay
Yeah,
off, which wasn't fun. So be sure that you're compliant, you know exactly how much you owe, get yourself an accountant. It's worth every penny. Don't try do it yourself if you're not inclined that way. Yeah. So that would be the biggest point. Learn to delegate things that you can.
got it. Thank you so much for sharing your challenges, Ashwin, and for having such an open conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I hope people leave with some insight.
I'm already living with insights, so totally, totally. And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.